Math 2, section 3.3. Today we are talking about proving triangle congruence by what? Very good. Okay, so we're learning two more methods, okay? Now what's important about these, and we'll kind of talk about it here, is that order definitely matters. Okay, so if you read through this, I'm going to give you a minute here quietly to read on your own. So similar to yesterday when we had side angle side, the angle had to be sandwiched, right Holly, in between the angle, correct? Okay, so today it is the same thing in that your side has to be sandwiched between two angles. You can't have a side on like somewhere else when we're doing angle side angle. Does that make sense? So that side has to be in between the two angles that are proving congruence. All right, we're going to move on. Are we ready? Okay, so turn on to page 139. So this is on page 139. It says, which two triangles are congruent by angle, side angle, and explain. So in your groups, make a decision, circle the two triangles that you believe are congruent by angle, side angle, and then how do you know? So talk about it in your groups. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pull a stick for someone to help me out here, but this is the wrong class, so that will not be done on Tuesday. All right, Andreas, you've been chosen before too, haven't you? Okay, so which two? We'll just label these as like 1, 2, and 3. So which two are congruent by angle, side angle? Very good, 1 and 3. And how? I'm actually going to choose another stick. So Andreas, you are off the hook there for that answer. So how do we know? How do we know that those two are congruent? Lucas. I've chosen yours before too. Perfect. So basically he said it fits angle, side angle because it goes angle, side angle. They're all on one side of your triangle. So I put, and you can, it's the same idea. I put that congruent segments. So see how this has 1 dash, this has 1 dash? Congruent segments are between congruent angles. So then I would also like you to state that triangle, and however you want to write it you can. So if we start with G and I go G, H, O is congruent to triangle, which one, what letter do I have to start with on the second triangle? C, A, T. Now, could I have chosen to start with O? Yes. So if I had started with O on this triangle, what would I have to start with on this triangle? T. Okay? Does that make sense? You have to keep the same things with the same. Any questions on that? Okay, so based on what we just talked about here, on number 1 here, you need to choose the 2 triangles that are congruent and write the correct statement, meaning like triangle whatever is congruent to the other triangle. Okay, so let's see what you can do on number 1. Okay, go ahead and try number 2 next. Check with your neighbor, see if you guys agree. Okay, can I get a volunteer to come up and do number 1 for a candy? Okay, Holly, and then number 2 after Holly's done. Okay, Aaron. So both you guys come up. Holly, you start. Explain what you're doing as you do it.
Green. The first one and then the last one again, they're both congruent by angle, side angle, because they're sandwiched in between, and this one isn't. I don't know what you mean by
that's perfect.
explain.
That works. No,
Okay.
I understand. You guys understand what she means? Okay, that's all that matters. Okay, wait, no, but
Well,
I want you to sit back down. You need to write the congruent statement. So you're going to make a triangle. And then how would you write the first triangle?
RPO.
Okay, RPO, that works. So write that down.
And
And
then
then congruent, good.
to WVX.
Do we agree? Is it WVX? Yep. And triangle, yeah.
Oops. My bad.
Perfect, that's it. You got it. Get your candy. Okay, number 2, come on up. You got this, Aaron. You do it.
Hey.
Okay. Yep, you're ready. Go ahead.
So I picked the top triangle. I did. And this triangle.
Do we agree with his findings? Yes, and do you see how how this has two slashes, I guess, and 1, and then 2 slashes and 1 with the congruent segment in between? Okay,
And right
so
there.
now write your congruent statement. Do we agree with this statement? Perfect. All right, thank you, Aaron. Grab your candy if you want it. Okay. Questions before we move on here? All right. Okay, so we're moving on to page 140 now. This is on page 140. Okay, so they're working through a proof here. You'll notice throughout this book that they write proofs lots of different ways. So I just want you to see this so that if you saw something like this on a test, you would understand it as well. So if we go through here, we're just going to fill in the blanks. So it's telling us that these angles, angle LKM, so that's that little slash mark there, and JKM, those are congruent. And then you have LMK and JMK are congruent, and they have the two markings on that. And we're supposed to prove that these triangles are congruent. So proof is those two things were given. Then they stated that KM is congruent to KM by which property? Reflexive property of congruence. And based on that, we know that the triangles are congruent because that would then tell us that this side right here in the middle. And so which method is the congruence by? Very good. Angle, side, angle. Okay, so that one not too difficult. So now we have to do our whole proof on number 4 here. Okay, you have more space than I have on here, but I always like kind of doing the T-chart thing with my statement and reason. Okay, so starting with number 1, I'm going to go ahead and just write all of my given information at once. So that is that QR is congruent to TS. Now starting with that, is it already marked QR is congruent to TS? Yes, because it has the single marking. Okay? And then it says that QR is parallel to TS. And again, these arrows represent that they're parallel. So anytime you see arrows online, it's telling you that these two lines right there, they are parallel. If you didn't know that, you might want to make a note to yourself that that means that they are parallel. Okay, so the arrow here and the arrow here is telling me the two lines are parallel. Okay, and so the number 1, it is, the reason is what? Good. Okay, now, number 2. What else do I know here? What else can I state in order to prove these are congruent? Okay, we can do that. That works. QT is congruent to QT. Okay, and so I'm going to make 2 markings there. And what is my reasoning for that? How do I know that? Very good. Okay, what else do I know? Because just knowing that 2 sides are congruent isn't enough, right? That's a side and a side. Okay, so yeah, it has to do with an angle. So angle RQT is congruent to what other angle? Good. STQ by what? Yes. Well, close. No, not vertical angles. Alternate interior angles. Okay, so now that I know that this angle and this angle are congruent, what method is this? Good. So we know that triangle QRT is congruent to triangle TSQ, and that is by side, angle, side. Do you guys feel like this is becoming easier? Also, 2 and 3, could you have stated those in opposite order? Yes, and you wouldn't be marked wrong, okay? So these could be stated in either order. All right, any other questions right now about this one? kind of.
It's more on like that.
But it's just like on proving triangles. It's actually pretty simple. I think you guys will be pleasantly surprised. Okay? There's like one proof. Only one proof on it. Okay? All right. Number 19. So this one, they're talking about angle, angle, side. So read through this left side right here. In fact, can I get somebody to read out loud while we follow along? Okay, Holly.
Wait, read the theorem.
Yeah, just right underneath here where it says if two angles.
In two angles and a non-including side of one triangle are congruent to two angles and the corresponding non-including side of another triangle, and the triangle are congruent.
Okay, so basically what they're saying is that you have two angles on one side, right? And then the other side is the segment. And again, it goes in order. Angle, angle, side. Okay? All right. This was on page 141. Okay, so moving on. On page 142, you're not going to be writing anything in there. And so kind of cross out those examples and maybe draw on these pictures. Or we can actually just kind of talk about this. But can these triangles be proven congruent with the information given in the diagram? And yes, these go in an order, okay? Angle and angle is on one side, right? And then you have the other side that connects to it. Angle, angle, side. Angle, angle, side. So the answer is yes by angle, angle, side. You're just, this is not on your, this is where I want you to write this in. I put in unused space on page 142. We're not going to be doing any of the examples on 142. So you can just kind of cross them out and you could draw them yourself. And in fact, I want you to draw this one and we're going to kind of talk through this one. Can you guys draw that picture? So just in one of the blank spots on 142, we're not going to do those proofs or anything on that page. Page 142 in your books. Okay, so what about this one? Is there, first of all, right now there's, or do I need to wait a minute? Are you guys not quite done? Okay, so in order to prove this one, what else do I need right now? Or is there something else that I know that is true that would help me out? Good. So right here, this angle and this angle, so we're going to say it is angle RTS is congruent to angle VUT by which method? No. Vertical angles. And then, now that I know that, are the triangles congruent? So the answer is yes, and how do I know that? Angle, angle, side. Okay, questions? All right, we are going to move on to page 143. We were just writing that stuff in on 142, okay? So on page 143, up at the top, they have all this given information, and we're going to do the proof. So let's go ahead and make our statements and reasons. So number one, let's go ahead and just write down all of our given information, okay? So we have PQ is perpendicular to QS. We have RS is perpendicular to SQ. We have T is the midpoint. Of PR. And that is all given. So I'm going to make a point right here because of the midpoint. Okay, now they put these 90-degree angles in here, but we have to talk about the 90-degree angles. Okay? So what I want you to do for number 2 is we're going to say angle Q is congruent to angle S. Okay? Now how do I know that they're congruent? Do you guys remember we kind of did this on the homework that we talked about? I think it was number 30 from your homework last night. It's because of the perpendicular lines, okay? And instead of, you know what, let's go ahead and write this whole thing out, but if you just put because of perpendicular lines, that would work, but I'm going to give you more detail right now, and so I'm going to put angle Q and angle S form right triangles by perpendicular lines. Therefore, they are congruent. Does that make sense? So anytime you have perpendicular lines, they make 90-degree angles. Okay? So since I had 2 perpendicular lines, it made the 90-degree angles. So RS and this one made a 90 degree, and QS and QP. Okay. Number 3, what's something else that I can state on this? So now I've talked about the 90-degree angles. What else do I need to talk about? Okay, Madison. Very good. PT is congruent to RT. How do I know that? T is the midpoint. So we're going to write definition of midpoint. So if they had said something about bisecting, then I would say that, but since they talked about it being a midpoint, we're going to use definition of midpoint. Okay? So now I know these two are equal. So now I have an angle on a side. Is there anything else that we know in here? Okay, what do you think, Stacy? We don't know that for sure because they didn't state that this was a midpoint of QS, only a PR. It has to do with an angle. Does anybody know, besides Madison, anybody else have an idea of angles that are congruent?
Is it, I don't know how to say it, but it's the vertical angles.
It is vertical angles. Okay, so the reason is vertical angles. Which angles are vertical angles? QTP So angle QTP is congruent to angle what? STR. And again, you could write these different ways, and it's by vertical angles. So now we know that this angle and this angle are also congruent. Okay? And so now I have three things, don't I? So what will number 5, we're going to say that the triangles are congruent. So triangle PQT is congruent to triangle RST by which method? Angle, angle, side. Remember to go in an order. Angle, angle, side. We have not learned anything that says side, angle, angle. It is angle, angle, side. Okay, questions, something that you want me to clarify and go back over? Okay, number 4. Are these congruent? So right now there's only an angle and a side. And we're still on page 143, right? At the bottom now?
R is the midpoint, and then they would both be angles. Aren't they?
Yeah, these are vertical angles. Good. So this angle and this angle.
And then it would be angle, angle, side, RAT, RSI.
Very good. So the answer is yes. So in order to explain, okay, we have all the given information, okay? And so the given information is that PR, and we could even do like a little chi chart here if we want to again. Oops. PR is congruent to RS. And what else was given? Angle PAR is congruent to angle SIR. And that was all given. Okay, 2. What other information did we just talk about? So I'm going to put angle ARP is congruent to which angle? Since I started with A, I need to start with IRS. And again, how did I know that? Vertical angles. So now I have 2 angles and a side. So 3 would say that angle PAR is congruent to, or it's not angle, triangle, SIR. And then what method is that by? Go in order. Angle, angle, side. Angle, angle, side. Okay, so now we're going to do problems 9 through 12 together on page 144. I'm going to be coming around and checking these. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to come around and check your answers. I'd like you to do numbers 9 and 10, and I'm going to get some volunteers to come up and explain this on the board. Oftentimes, the easiest thing to do is draw a picture. So draw a picture of the triangle. Okay? Label it in order. Okay? If you want to come up and do the problem, raise your hand for me to check your work, and then I'll check it and let you come up and do the problem. Okay, so I'm looking for number 10. Yeah, go ahead. Go right. So they tell you that, I know, they're that line. So which angles connect that line? will you just draw a picture though real quick of the triangle? Okay, yeah. Okay, and if you go on to numbers 11 and 12, that also works. And I'll be continue checking. Okay, so number 10. So you go up and you talk about it. No, you don't want to. Perfect. All right, go ahead and get your candy. Thank you. Okay, we're looking at 11 and 12 right now. Okay, so let me come check some answers. And I need to move the page up. Is everybody good with these two problems? Were there any questions? Does this make sense? Yes? Okay. If you have questions, ask. Okay. All right, I'm looking at number 12. Who wants to come do number 12? Yes. Okay, Holly. Sorry. Okay, so can you explain why it's angle side angle?
Here's an angle. Here's this side, like the midpoint of the side.
Okay,
There's another angle.
that works. Also, another way of saying it is that your congruent segment is in between your two congruent angles.
Oh.
But that also works. We know what you're talking about. Good job. You can get your candy. Okay, Holly, come up and do number 12. Okay, and then we're also going to do 15.
Would you go BAC? Like
You
angle.
only have to state, like, is it angle side angle or...
Oh, it's angle side.
Okay, so it's angle side, yeah. And then, yes, you would do B, A, and then C. So that's how you kind of explain it.
Like that?
Yeah, so you have your two congruent angles on one side, and then the next is the side where you have your congruent sides. Perfect. Okay. Thank you. All right, number 15. Were there questions on those? Are they pretty easy? Yes? Okay, 15. So it says angle E and angle I, and then segment FE and segment GI, those are congruent. What else must you know in order to prove by angle side angle, and then also by angle side? So we're going to need to draw two triangles. Okay? So I'm going to draw this first triangle, and we're going to have to label it FDE. So I'm going to go FDE. Okay? And then I'm going to draw my second triangle. And since F matches with G, I'm going to write G in this spot, and then H and I. So we just want to make sure that my letters are in the correct order to match both triangles. Okay? Next, I'm going to mark the information that they've given me. So they told us that angle E is congruent to angle I. So we're going to go E with one marking and I. Okay, and then it says FE. So here's FE and GI are congruent. So those each have the single mark there. So if I want to prove it by angle, side, angle, what would I need to prove still? What else needs to happen? Very good. So angle F would need to be congruent to angle G. In order to prove to make angle, side, angle, we'd want this angle to be congruent, right? Because our congruent angles have to sandwich the congruent segment in the middle. Okay? So now I'm going to give you a minute to try it on your own. Angle, angle, side. What would you need to do on that one? So do it individually here, and then we'll check your answers. Actually, I'm going to pull a stick. So talk in your groups once you get it, and then we'll pull a stick to see if we got it correct. All right, Riley, what'd you get? Perfect. Angle D needs to be congruent to angle H, because that would then make angle, angle, and then the side. Angle, angle, and the side. Okay? Any questions?